gals, non-binary pals, welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. It's a mega video. It's gonna be tying up everything about the L Word Generation Q season 2, and that does not mean I'm stopping talking about the L word. Don't worry, we're still gonna be going on about it, but this video is basically going to be everything that went right with season 2 and everything that went wrong with season 2. Key point here, in my opinion. You know, there's people out there who tell me all the time, you don't criticize Generation Q enough. And I mean, if you want to know my reasoning behind that, like, go and watch my LA Times video. this is something I do for fun in my free time. I wouldn't sit here and pump out like hate videos, basically. Like, I think that you can criticize something in a way that's not horrible or anything, and that's what I'm attempting to do with this video. I'm not saying that I dislike the show or anything like that. I'm just saying these are things that if it was up to me or something, that I would change. But, you know, some people may really like the things that I don't, and that's all fine. As I always say, the world would be a super boring place if we all thought the same thing. So as always, whatever we're talking about here, or just Generation Q in general, let me know what you think down in the comment section. It's always open to hear back from everyone, and I find it super interesting talking to people from different countries, backgrounds, ages. It's just great to get as many opinions as possible. So make sure you comment down below, and as always, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It's free, it's fun. Like, how many things can you say that about? Like, clicking that like or subscribe button is literally free. So go at it, and you'll also be helping the channel out as well. So let's get right into today's video. I've tried to keep this organized in kind of like a top 10 style for both, like everything right that I liked and everything wrong. And that doesn't mean that these 10 things are the only things, but I'm not gonna, be super petty and go over like tiny little things. So this is everything I think that went right and wrong with Generation Q. And to kind of balance it out, I'm gonna do something right, something wrong, and then go through like that. So let's get into it and start out with one of the things that I think is unanimously agreed as a great thing that came out of Generation Q season 2, and that is the relationship with Dani and Gigi. And as Marja Lewis-Ryan said in her interview with me, if you haven't seen that, I'll link it in the cards above and down below. Basically, a lot of the relationships this season were kind of born out of the fact that they couldn't really bring on a lot of guest stars. So they had to kind of play with what they had with the main regulars and then the couple of big guest stars that they had. Something positive that came out of COVID, who knew? So I really like this couple. I think the actresses, everything about it, and seeing the reaction to them on social media, it definitely seems as though a lot of people would agree that is a huge, huge positive about Generation Q. So one of the things that I didn't like so much about Generation Q season 2, and this will kind of bleed into a few other points on the side of things I didn't like, is the dropping of a lot of storylines. The main one that I was really interested in that we didn't get any more clarification on was the Shane and Tess, really, and the poker situation. Like, in the beginning, it seems as though we were setting something up with Eddie, and then it seems as though like Eddie was going to be something, like it was going to come back in some way. And then we also had, them taking the rake. And my good friend Evelyn Dar, who, if you haven't been on Evelyn's channel, go and check her out. She's awesome, and she doesn't need me plugging her videos, but she's really great. And when we were talking about the season in general, Evelyn was saying that the whole rake situation was kind of like Chekhov's gun. And if you guys don't know what Chekhov's gun is, I'm just going to read the little blip through Google so that, everybody's kind of on the same page. And Chekhov's gun is a dramatic principle that suggests that details within a story or play will contribute to the overall narrative. This encourages writers to not make false promises in their narrative by including extraneous details that will not ultimately play off by the last act, chapter, or conclusion. So I was basically working under the assumption that all of the things with the poker, and like, you remember when they had one of the first games and Tess like went off into the back room with that guy, like I really thought this was all kind of building to something. And then, Shane's money problems and things like that, I really thought that they were setting up some sort of, big reveal, or that like Shane was going to get in trouble with it. So maybe they will next season, but that was just something I was a little disappointed that it was kind of dropped and went nowhere. So one of the things I really did like, and I think this will be quite controversial because I've seen a lot of people fall on either side. There's not really a lot of people in the middle about this, and that is Finley's addiction storyline. I know a lot of people have said they thought it kind of came out of nowhere, and just personally, I think this was a really strong storyline and that they really built it through both of the seasons of Generation Q. And because it was built over 2 seasons, and as well, there was such a huge gap between both of the seasons that maybe people don't remember as well what happened in the first season, because they were really subtle little things, like when Finley talked about how she'd never, had sober sex with anyone. And I think some people just maybe weren't, thinking that way, because if you aren't really around addiction, then maybe you wouldn't be picking up on those things. And I also understand that, like, I'm going to see things that other people aren't, because I like this, I do this on YouTube and talk about the show. Like, I watch every episode, like, multiple times. I take notes. Like, I know that I'm going over like every single detail. So I think that's why I was remembering like literally every little thing about Finley and her addiction. So I think they did this really well. But the one thing I didn't kind of buy is like, especially like Finley, where she is like class-wise, like she's not going to be someone that's going out drinking. Like, I think it would have been much more kind of real if like those scenes where Finley was in the kitchen and like hiding the beer from Sophie, I thought that was a lot more realistic. And maybe it was just because like the argument with Sophie and stuff at center, like spinning out outside of the house. But my own experience anyway with being around addiction a lot is that it's a very like private thing that people do, in their home a lot of the time. And also I think that it did ramp up very quickly at the end, because most people would be really surprised by a lot of addicts, because a lot of addicts are extremely functioning and you would never know, whereas Finley, like, everybody knew that something was going on. And there were a few other little like clumsy details where, when Sophie and Finley after the DUI are at the book launch for Alice's book, and Sophie's been around Finley all night and they've been drinking, and Sophie's like, have you been drinking tonight? And it's like, yeah, she's been standing with you. But overall, apart from those the tiny things, I did really like this, and I think it was a pretty accurate representation. So another thing that I think could have been improved upon in season 2 was Alice's storyline. Now, bear with me. I know some people, when, the book and Dana's and Tom and everything, like, I liked all of that. However, I think that Alice's professional and like her show and everything, we didn't see hardly anything to do with that. and most of Alice's storyline was very much focused on her relationships. And when it came to Alice's book, I just think with a show that only has 10 episodes, that there was a lot of time put in with the doubling of the Dana chapter. Like, I liked the scene with Tom when we got Alice, like with her raw, real emotion. And then although the Bette, Shane, Alice kind of speech at the book launch, I would have really liked if they used that at the book launch instead of reading the chapter that Alice spoke about her feelings about Dana, not necessarily even Dana. I would have preferred if we either heard a story about Dana and the group that we didn't know, like when they first met or something like that, or we heard a story from the book in the time between the two shows. I think this could have been like a really cool place to put in, where's Tasha? Like, what happened to Tasha? Or even some big event like that we know, like Alice talked about having a cancer scare and other things that have bound to have happened in the past 10 years that we have been missing out on their lives. So I did really like the Alice and Tom scene where Alice talks about Dana and Tom talks about losing his brother. I thought that was great. I just would have loved the other scenes to have used. I just feel like it was kind of repeating in a way, but maybe that's just me, and I know they were really popular scenes, so I just wanted to look at it in a different way. So next up, one thing that I really liked, and again, this will not be any surprise, is even though I absolutely adore Dani and Gigi, I really did love the Bette and Gigi storyline, and I feel it was so necessary to just kind of have some really great hot scenes, especially because we had so long to go without the show, and then just nobody was saying that Bette and Gigi were going to ride off into the sunset together, and I just kind of loved that. It was a low kind of stakes thing, and then also it kind of drove Gigi to Dani, so it was a necessary too, and I just really liked it. I really liked those scenes, and also judging by the millions of people who have watched the Bette and Gigi top off, I think a lot of them agree that it was a great move. Next up on the improvement side is that we waited all the way until season 2, episode 9, to have our 4 OGs on screen together. And I just really think that, especially because we had Laurel Holloman for 5 episodes this season, I think there's some other scenes that could have been cut out or moved around or shortened, where we could have just got a really great scene at Dana's or even at a restaurant or something that would be kind of reminiscent of our Planet days. And I really felt so much joy in episode 9 when they were all together. And I know that the karaoke episode would have had a really different feel if Tina and Carrie were there, but I don't know, the OG fan of me really wants to see Tina there too. And I would have loved to have seen some more scenes, even maybe a Tina and Alice scene, or a Tina and Shane scene earlier in the season. Yes, the episode where they go to therapy with Angie, but there was a lot of things that they ended up talking about, the kidney donation and the thing with Bette's mom. I really, really enjoyed those scenes, but now looking back, I'm well, okay, maybe they're going somewhere later down the road with it, but I would have utilized Laurel Holloman's time a little bit better. But again, who am I to be saying these things? Next up on things I loved is a very straightforward one, and that was our guest stars this season. And I mean our OG guest stars this season. I absolutely loved that they brought back Alice's mom and Sherry Jaffe. I honestly don't care who they bring back, when they bring them back. Honestly, I would love to see Wheezy on the show. So Wheezy, please come back, girl. And there's tons of other people. I mean, James, like there's some really great people. And it goes without saying, a lot of the main stars like Tasha and Helena, whose cameo was cut this season, but I'll talk more about that at my live on Saturday. And I just would love to see anyone back at all. It makes me so happy. I mean, I'm not even like a huge Sherry Jaffe fan, but I was so happy when she came back. So next up on my criticism side, I feel bad saying that, but probably this is the biggest thing that I have a criticism with, and I would like to pitch myself as a person that I will come to work and I will fix this for you, because my biggest criticism is the L Word timeline. It's been a problem, as Leisha and Kate actually said on Pants today. The L Word and time it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But Generation Q has taken it to new bounds. I have been working to try and figure the timeline out. Even just this is the first episode that whatever way you work it out, there is no possible understanding of the time-space continuum in the L Word. So the alternatives I've come up with are, what type of time vortex are we in? Is it like Groundhog Day, where after Dani and Sophie's wedding, they have another Friday, the 9th of April? Is this the key date that we're repeating over and over again? Or is it a Back to the Future situation where Dani's got so much money, she literally has a DeLorean that goes into the past and she can like redo days? Is it a Looper situation? Is there a future Bette Porter that has some sort of time travel device that's controlling all of this to get Tina back to her? Or is there some sort of Loki, Doctor Strange, like timeline variations, time branches going on? The more you get going on the season, it really, I mean, even for lesbians, like Bette and Pippa, I think have been dating for about, again, depending on how many 9th of Aprils there are, depends how many, May 21st there are. So Bette and Pippa have been dating for, 3 to 11 days-ish. So, they're having these like serious conversations, but it just... Bette and Gigi, it seems as though they were together for about 3 days. Like it's all over the show, and it just really takes you out of it when you're, working these things out in real time, and it just makes absolutely no sense what's going on. I am available. I will be the keeper of the timeline, because obviously I don't know whether there is a person that this is their job on set, but normally there are people on sets that like it's in the same sense of like someone who is in control of like the show Bible, or whenever they're like, oh, Bette Porter, she prefers I don't know if this is true, but prefers red wine over white wine, and things like that people who are kind of the know-all of everything. And I would like to volunteer for that position, because clearly it's open. So to go from something that Generation Q did oh so wrong to something they did oh so right, a great thing about this season was the karaoke episode. I mean, everyone loved it. It was so much fun. And I know this is the third time I've said this, but as Marja Lewis Ryan said in her interview with me, because yes, I am still living off this, that the karaoke episode was sorely needed, and it was so much fun. I absolutely loved it, and it's perfect. So another kind of storyline thing that I got a bit frustrated with was Dani's dad, and I feel as though this was another storyline where we just simply didn't get enough information, and I was really sure that they were going somewhere with this too. We never even really got clarity on what it was they're accusing him of, because in the final episode it really seems as though he is literally responsible for the opioid crisis. And I mean, if that's the case, then Dani should not have any qualms about absolutely testifying against him and putting him in jail for fucking ever. So I want more information. I need more information. And I feel as though, I mean, this kind of can go in the general thing of Dani and Gigi. I feel really, really didn't get enough screen time. And yes, like, nobody knows before the show starts airing, like, who people are going to like. But I liked Gigi last season, and I know not as many people, like, really, really liked her last season, but there definitely was a small army of us last season who really liked Gigi. And Dani is definitely, like, from the first episode last season, Dani has always been, it's certainly from my own stats and things that I see on my channel, Dani is very, very popular. So I feel as though it wasn't so prevalent last season because Dani and Sophie were together and Sophie gets a lot of screen time. So Dani was getting more screen time. But this season, I mean, even Dani was getting screen time in season 1 as well through her relationship with Bette. And obviously, like, Bette gets a lot of screen time too. So Bette and Dani's friendship and everything was kind of dropped. And I guess this is 2 points that I'm making here. That Dani and Bette, I really didn't like that they kind of put them against each other at the end, and that they didn't fix it by the end of the season. I really enjoyed that kind of friendship with Bette and Dani, because I think that's a relationship that exists a lot in the kind of queer world, because it's, you know, it's kind of like the chosen family thing, but like, I know that there's a lot of people in my sort of working realm that I will always go out of my way to help, like, especially, I mean, anyone, but like, especially to other, like, lesbian and bi women. Like, it's, you know, it's just one of those little things that is nice. So I really liked this portrayal of Bette and Dani, because I've had older lesbian women help me, and that I now have younger lesbians that I help, and it's just, I really like that representation. And then they had them, like, kind of pit against each other, and yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with them next season, but I hope that they make up anyway. So I guess parcel all that under like Dani and Dani's dad, and yeah. So one of the best things about this season absolutely had to be all the homages to the original show. There were so many, and I'm doing like a massive Easter egg video that'll be out soon. I did already do one for episode 4 because there was so many Easter eggs in episode 4. I mean, there was Alice's mum guest starred, and then the next week was Sherry Jaffe, but there was also all these little things that, unless you're a big fan of the original, that you wouldn't catch, like when Bette and Pippa are talking and they've just pulled Pippa's work. Bette's like, I can call Peggy, and it's like little things like that I absolutely love, and the show does so well, because as I always say, like, you don't necessarily have to watch the OG, but you do catch all these little things that are there for fans of the original, but they're not so overdone that new fans of Gen Q are going to be totally lost. I did actually see a post the other day. This is a quick side note, and it's the first time I've ever seen this, and it was someone was saying on Reddit that they were confused in one of the last episodes of the season because the characters were referencing these scenes that didn't happen, that they'd never seen. And so they were like, oh, maybe I've missed something. And they were like, so I went online and I discovered that, did you guys know there's this whole original show and they were all in it? So I thought it was really funny that now it's Generation Q is the show, and then people are like, and as an aside, oh, and there was an original one, I thought it was funny. So another on the kind of improvement side is there was some characters this season that I just feel they really didn't get a meaty storyline, and Shane was one of those characters. Also, where is Shane's dog? Because Shane, yes, she had the relationship with Tess, but as I mentioned before, the poker thing, and then I just feel as though Shane, Alice and Bette are still them and very true to their characters, but because Shane has now kind of worked on herself and matured, and she's not the same person that she was in the original, that sometimes it's they don't quite know what to do with her character. And even things like Shane saying all season that she doesn't like drama, which we know about Shane. She doesn't want to, get into things with people. And then in the last episode, she tells Bette about Carrie having cold feet. Things like that just didn't make sense to me. And there was a few other things that just seemed so out of character for some people. And then you had Maribel and Micah in the episode, the karaoke episode, where Maribel all of a sudden's oh, Micah and her haven't spoken in a week. We've literally seen all their text messages leading up to this. Why all of a sudden would they not be speaking after they've slept together? And then there's Micah wasn't in one of the episodes, and then I really enjoyed Isis King on the show, and I was like, oh, maybe that she's going to come in for a love interest. But then when they kind of were oh, Micah just kind of needed her to see Maribel's the one, and I don't know, I was a bit because then I was kind of invested in the character, and I really liked that she was a doctor. I thought that was going to be an interesting angle, and then it's someone else at Micah's work that maybe they can incorporate him more into the group, because again, I feel as though Micah got the shaft a bit because he wasn't in one episode, and then in the finale he was literally only in the Finley intervention scene. And he's another character that when he's on screen, I like him, and I'm interested in the therapy, where he's working, and I would love to see Nat back, even just in that aspect. But I feel as though he's not really getting a chance because his screen time is so limited, and when he is on screen, it's normally to be a sounding block against someone else. I thought the Micah and Maribel sex scene was great, and I just feel as though Micah is a lead, and they really need to invest in him and give him if Maribel and him are going to be a couple, incorporate Sophie's family, or even know a bit more about Maribel, and I hope that's something they're gonna do next season. So 2 more things that I think they absolutely nailed this season, and normally have nailed on the show, is the nailing. The sex scenes on the show are really great. The intimacy coordinator just really, really knows her stuff, and I think that the majority have been brilliant. And another aspect that was great is the guest stars this season. Even though they were so limited by COVID, And I mean, we had Rosie O'Donnell, Donald Faison, and as I said before, Sherry Jaffe and Alice's mum were all brilliant. And it's just even more admirable considering that they were so limited by the pandemic this year. So just putting my final thoughts in here as another thing that I think they did absolutely brilliantly this season is representation. And I mean, this show in itself, even the original when it was on, is just, it's done so much for so many people. And I get messages every single day from people who are watching the show in places where it's illegal to be who you are and to live openly. And there's people who are watching the show in the US, the UK, wherever, and they're watching the show in secret because they're not ready or they can't come out yet. And I really don't say this lightly, but this show is literally saving and changing lives, and that cannot be like underestimated. It is honestly one of the most important shows on television. And I also think, and this kind of goes into the LA Times thing, that people are very, very quick to criticize it and to say, well, this isn't there and this and that. And we shouldn't be tearing down one of the only shows on television that has a largely gay characters, but also like a lot of people that work on the show are LGBTQ. So I just think that the question we really should be asking ourselves is, why is there not more representation? Why do we only have this show and then a few other like very small shows and a few mainstream shows that have one or two gay characters? I absolutely love this show. I obviously think that there's, some things that could definitely be improved on, because I did think overall there was a lot of storylines that I certainly defended throughout the season because I thought that it was all being tied up at the end. But, even if that was the case, there's always going to be things that people can nitpick at or overpraise, whatever you want to say. There's good and bad in everything. And the whole discussion and episodic presentation of this so that we can discuss things week for week is one of my favorite aspects of the show. Like, I wouldn't do this if I didn't enjoy talking about the show and getting other people's thoughts and opinions. So I would love to hear what everybody thought was the best and the worst things about the show. This is not a place that is attacking the show or to say, I hate this, I hate that, and especially, absolutely, I will never have any patience whatsoever for people who attack the actors or the writers. This is not the place to do that. I think that there's never a place to do that, but I understand that I won't be able to control what other people do. So if you want to have a constructive discussion about things that you liked or maybe would like changed about the show, leave your suggestions, thoughts, everything down in the comment section. Again, if you're looking for a keeper of the timeline, I am available. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a big thumbs up. And as I said at the beginning, come on, it's free. How many things can you say that about? So if you want to follow me over on social media, I post a lot of content over there. I also have a Patreon and an L Word merch store, and all the videos I've mentioned in this video, my interview with Marja Lewis-Ryan, no, I will never shut up about it, my talk about the LA Times, and everything else will be linked in the comment section down below and the description box and the little iCards. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.